And joining me now here on set is Susan Page, Washington Bureau Chief for USA Today. Mo Elleithee, Democratic strategist and director of Georgetown University's Institute of Politics and Public Service, and Brendan Buck, former advisor to Republican speakers John Boehner and Paul Ryan, as well as an NBC News political analyst. Thank you so much for joining me. And Susan, I want to start with you. You know, they say that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. How insane is the Republican conference right now?
Well, did that sound like a process that was coming to a conclusion? No. When this congressman, who is a pretty respected voice in the House, isn't backing anybody, won't say if he would support a candidate if he was dependent on Democratic votes to get where he needed to go, if you needed Democratic votes, for instance, to empower Patrick McHenry to act like a speaker. This is a process that it sounds like we may not even, this group of 9, the eventual speaker, assuming there is an eventual speaker, may not even be among these 9. I think we are nowhere in this process.
And Brendan, I want to turn to you. You know this conference better than most. What do you make of this? 9 men now going for speaker. Will the fourth time be the charm?
Yeah, I don't know if we can have any confidence that it is. There you have Stephen Womack basically saying, I'm also holding back. I may be willing to block the next person that comes up. If everybody is waiting for their perfect candidate, we will never get there. The one thing that I did find interesting, he keeps holding out Patrick McHenry, the Speaker pro tem, as an option. One thing that may be working to all of our advantage for this to end is the idea that the alternative might be Patrick McHenry. It may ultimately become clear to these members that if we don't coalesce around somebody, it's going to end up being a Speaker pro tem, which they don't like. They want someone permanent. They want someone that's the Republican Speaker of the House. And maybe that will convince people it's just not worth having this fight anymore. One thing I do know about this conference, they don't learn lessons very easily. They don't really understand that when we've hit rock bottom. So I imagine they're probably going to keep digging for a little while. So who knows?
And Mo, I want to turn to you. Just 2 of these Republican candidates voted to certify the 2020 election. Are any of these potential partners for Democrats going forward, or no?
I mean, look, it depends on what the House Republican Conference does, right? They're going to put forward a candidate or they're not. If they don't, I think there are enough Democrats out there who are willing to work with enough Republicans to actually come up with this empowering McHenry option. But are any Democrats going to cross over and actually vote for any of these individuals to be Speaker? No, of course they won't. Look, they did not vote to save Speaker McCarthy's job, in part because they lost trust in him for breaking several promises as they see it. None of these guys are going to be seen as, especially the 7 who voted against certification, none of them are going to be seen as more trustworthy Speaker candidates.
And Brendan, your old boss, John Boehner, said that he agreed with Newt Gingrich that it's time to empower McHenry. Do you agree?
Yeah, I do. And I think there's a couple ways they could do it. You could vote to do it, or McHenry could just start trying to bring up bills and allow the Congress to challenge whether he has the authority.
And you brought that up in your op-ed last week, right?
The rules of the House are effectively whatever a majority says they are.
But that's essentially daring them to stop him.
Exactly right. And they could bring up something that would be hard to vote against, like something has to do with Israel, a resolution condemning Hamas. That would be really hard for somebody to object and say they don't want to come up. And once you've done that, you've sort of broken the seal. It might be able. Now, that is not a durable long-term solution.
And you know who's against that idea? Patrick McHenry. He's against that idea. And you know, if you expect Democrats to rescue Republicans by either voting president or empowering Patrick McHenry, they're going to expect something in return for it. They're going to expect a guarantee there won't be a government shutdown, passage of Ukraine aid, and that's what is a poison pill for so many of the House Republicans.
That's why they don't want that coalition government. For the same reason that Kevin McCarthy didn't try to negotiate with Democrats to save his own job, Patrick McHenry knows that it would be poisonous for him in the Republican conference to deal and give something away. That's why he said in that meeting, I will only do this if you all vote for me to do it. That's the only way I'm doing it, because he understands how unpopular it will be. Now, things may look a little different if we're still 2 weeks from now and we don't have a speaker. Things may be a little more interesting.
Susan, last week there was all this talk about the urgency of this, that with the Israel-Hamas war, with the Biden administration putting forth that $105 billion supplemental package, it was announced, say, days are blurring together. I think it was Thursday or Friday. But now, this still hasn't gone anywhere. Is there any urgency left? And what does this chaos on the House mean for that supplemental package? That's a lot of money for Israel, Ukraine, a lot of other priorities that the administration says, border security. Is there any urgency left?
Well, that bill cannot go forward unless the House has a speaker or an empowered speaker pro tem. I think there is urgency around Ukraine aid, Israel aid, and also the November 17th budget deadline. November 17th is not that far away, and we're going to have a partial government shutdown if the House doesn't get its act together.
Mo, I want to turn to you. Last week, President Biden tried, speaking about the supplemental request, the president in his Oval Office address tried to link, the wars in Israel and in Ukraine. How effective was that messaging? Do you think that he effectively made that case to the American people?
I think he did a very solid job doing so. I think, look, people are seeing these images come out of Israel every single day, and I think we have seen even Democrats who were a little bit more split in polling in terms of their sort of unmitigated support for Israel are feeling a lot more supportive of Israel right now. Connecting that to Ukraine, he's got a very strong narrative to tell. The problem is not with the message he's delivering, but it's everything we've been talking about, what we're seeing coming out of the House. I think we are in a very dangerous place right now. I think the longer this mess, and it's all connected, the longer this mess goes on in the House, the stronger the president looks on these issues. But that doesn't mean we're going to actually get there anytime soon, and that's a very dangerous thing for the country. And
really quickly, Susan, I don't have a whole lot of time to get into 2024, but how do you think this mess in the House will affect 2024 going forward? There's already a lot of bickering between Governor Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley over the Israel-Hamas war, but in terms of the situation in the House with no House Speaker, how do you see this playing out over the next coming months before the caucuses?
I think it may help President Biden look like the grown-up in the room, but I don't think it's got a big effect on it, and I think it continues to look pretty likely that Donald Trump is going to be the Republican nominee.
Okay. And Mo?
I don't think it's going to impact the presidential, except that it's going to allow the president to continue to drive the narrative that with Donald Trump as the nominee and these guys in charge of the House, do we really want to return to this sort of chaos, which was what he ran against in 2020 to great effect. I think Hakeem Jeffries is looking pretty good, though, to be the next actual permanent speaker after the midterms.
All right. Thank you all so much for joining us. Susan, Mo, and Brendan, thanks so much for joining us here on Meet the Press Now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.